Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Skewed and Reviewed Skewedcast. I'm Gareth, creator of Skewed and Reviewed. You can catch us online at sknr.net, and we cover all things movies, games, television, hardware, entertainment, travel, pop culture, conventions, and more. We also have our quarterly magazine, Skewed and Reviewed the magazine. The newest issue will be out at the end of the month. We're just putting the finishing touches on it, and we've had to kind of put it on hold for a bit because we will be doing some travel coverage coming up, so we have to wait to get that in. And of course, WonderCon 2021, we want to make sure that that is fully covered. And then, of course, we are on Pinal, Pinal Central.com, keyword skewed. It is a network of 12 newspapers, and under that address, PinalCentral.com, it's the online portal for the papers. You can see our game reviews, and last but not least is my weekly radio segments on BJ Shea's Geek Nation on KISW FM. We have the simulcast on our page. Well, normally we have Joseph and Michael with us, and this week it is going to be just Justin and myself, so we'll have a bit of a shorter show. And part of that is just because everything has gotten crazy. The folks up in Washington are dealing with daylight savings time and such, and Joseph's schedule has just been absolutely chaotic since he's had to adjust back to it. And Michael is finishing up some family stuff, and he's actually on his way back from Colorado as we speak. And, as I mentioned, we have some travel stuff coming up. So it's a kind of crazy time, but we wanted to make sure we get that all taken care of for you. And starting off, Justin is going to tell us about some of his theories and what he's looking forward to with the upcoming Godzilla vs. Kong, which is scheduled to be released in theaters where available and HBO Max on the 31st of this month in the United States. And a lot of anticipation. We've had a lot of really good people join into our YouTube channel. I've had a lot of traffic on the clips and the interviews and the cast interviews that we have up there. And we have something in the works. We're not sure of the time frame when it's coming back, but I can tell you this. There is a series of novels and comics and that sort of thing that are in the works. So we have some interviews coming with the creative talents behind that. And Justin, take it away.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start out by saying I was actually pretty shocked. I guess I wasn't really paying attention when the movie was coming out. I guess I sort of just assumed it was going to come out in like June or July for some reason. And, just yesterday, it was revealed to me that it's actually coming out the 31st of this month, which is, just around the corner, just a couple weeks away. Actually, it releases internationally in 5 days. So that was a kind of a pleasant surprise. It was a lot sooner than I thought it was going to be. The last time we spoke about this, I offered a theory, and for anybody who's like really concerned about what the big twist is going to be, I would probably skip ahead just a little bit because I think the marketing material all but confirms it now, that the big kind of conflict in the movie is really not going to be Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm sure that's going to be in there, but just like a lot of these things go, there's going to be, you're going to have your people who are rooting for Kong, you're going to have your people rooting for Godzilla. They have to have a shared antagonist, because there's no way that the filmmakers are going to just definitively make one the good guy and one the bad guy. A lot of the trailers kind of make Godzilla look like he's the antagonist in this thing, but I think that's going to just be some clever misdirection. I think a lot of the movie will probably be set up to look like that, but you got your Godzilla fans, and you can't just make a movie where Kong is your hero and Godzilla is your villain. In this day and age, it's just it would be kind of a bold idea, but that's not how it's going to go. Again, if you're really concerned about the big twist, skip forward about a minute or two. But the twist is going to be that Mechagodzilla is the real villain. So the movie's going to be set up as Godzilla vs. Kong, and then they're going to have a shared antagonist, later in the movie with Mechagodzilla. There was a recent trailer a couple days ago, pretty short 1-minute trailer on IGN that had one shot at the end where I think it's either Kong or Godzilla's eye, and you can see a reflection in it, and it's very clearly it's Mechagodzilla. I'm excited. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I've actually enjoyed. I know that there's some legit criticisms of these newer movies, but I think they're pretty solid. And if anything, I think this sort of Monsterverse experiment that Legendary's been doing outside of the MCU, I think it's probably the best cinematic universe project. All sorts of different companies have tried to replicate the MCU success, and Monsterverse is not perfect, but I think it's better than most of the other attempts that movie companies have tried to do. And as a big fan of the old Godzilla movies, and I grew up on them, I was a huge nostalgia factor for them. I think they've been pretty solid. Think they've been really solid up till now, and so I'm looking forward to it. Again, it's only a few days away, so if nothing else, it's just going to be a monster brawl. Hopefully, a little bit more monster brawling than human talking, but suppose we'll have to wait and see.
So I have a question I've been waiting to ask you, and then obviously it's very difficult to do this because we don't know what direction the movie will take. We don't know who's going to be standing at the end, who's not. They've been advertising the one must fall. Why don't you go with where you think they will go and what you want them to do with where you think the next Monsterverse or future Monsterverse films will go?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I think the one must fall marketing thing, I think that's really just marketing. To be honest, I don't put a ton of stock into that. I don't think that they're going to, kill off Godzilla or they're going to kill off Kong. It's kind of difficult because, the last movie didn't really make a lot of money. I think if I remember correctly, did okay overseas, but I don't know if it really did all that great. So, I think the Monsterverse is kind of in doubt a little bit in terms of the future. This was the last movie that had been totally confirmed, if I'm not mistaken. So, then you also couple with the fact that, with COVID, even though it is releasing in theaters and they're also releasing on streaming services, it's hard to kind of see a scenario where this movie makes a lot of money, even if it's really good. Even the best of movies right now are going to struggle to make money. I hope, just as a Godzilla fan and a fan of this Monsterverse project, I hope they continue, and they understand that there's kind of, extenuating circumstances as to why it might not be doing as well as it would in normal circumstances. Now, how I see this playing out, I think, you're going to have Godzilla versus Kong. There's probably going to be, just so people aren't, completely taken off guard, you do probably have to have like one battle in the movie where one is kind of definitively victorious over the other. But, I probably, that will probably happen somewhere in the middle of the movie. And then, Mechagodzilla will be the big bad, and then they're going to have to team up together to beat him. I think that's kind of generally the arc that they're going to go with this movie. And what that's going to leave is, Godzilla and Kong are both going to be alive at the end, and Mechagodzilla will have been defeated. I think that's probably going to be how it goes. And then you kind of get into the question where they go from here. So Mechagodzilla is kind of like one of the big bads that from classic Godzilla that a lot of people had been really clamoring for. So they've already done Ghidorah. They've already, with this movie, have done Mechagodzilla. So what are the other big Godzilla villains that they could do for a future movie? there's not a ton to choose from, really. They could do Gigan or, something like Space Godzilla, but, even those are relatively, I guess, obscure compared to something like Mechagodzilla or Ghidorah. So really from here, what I would like to see, honestly, just from just a fan perspective, my dream come true movie would be another take on Biollante. I think that was one of my favorites growing up, so I think that would be really cool. There's a few that they could choose from that are a little bit more obscure, and they could kind of like re-envision them, I think, like Destroya or again, Gigan, Space Godzilla. I think those are all kind of options they could take and kind of reimagine them, but, the one that I would want to see the most is Biollante redone.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about it, you brought up a excellent point, and that's box office. So Godzilla, 2014, 200,676,000 US, 324.3 international, 524,976. Now, of course, we don't know how well it did with home video and toys and collectibles and that sort of thing. That's always a very tricky thing. Kong Skull Island, 2017, 168 million US, 398 million international, 566, 652,000 overseas. So not bad, but of course, the new standard for many of these $100-and-something million FX-laden action films is that you want to try to do $1 billion, because that's what several of the Marvel films have done. That has been what the Star Wars films, with the exception of Solo, have done. But of course, as Marvel will point out with films like Ant-Man and so on and so forth, you can still make good money by having a $150 million film and making a return around $500 to $700 million. That is still very profitable, especially with the other options, like I mentioned, the streaming, the video on demand, DVDs, merchandise. But you nailed it with Godzilla King of the Monsters. 386 million worldwide, 110 million US, 276 million international. There was a drop. And this is on a $170 million budget. So there's the old saying that with marketing and publicity and duplication, although that's not as common in the digital era, but let's just say ancillary cost, you have to make 3 times production. So there would be the argument that Godzilla King of the Monsters didn't make money. Now, again, Hollywood accounting, some people would say, well, that's not accurate. That being said, it seems to me, and I think part of it could be the fact that we have not had epic movies released in the last year, but there seems to be, I would say, the highest level of anticipation and excitement around this film than all 3 of the previous films combined. What would you say to that?
It's interesting. That might be just perspective. I do think that I've been hearing, some talk of this movie, but I'll be honest, like King of the Monsters, I mean, at least among my friend group, King of the Monsters definitely had a lot of buzz. And again, that really could just be just perspective. That's just totally just anecdotal. It's not data driven at all. But I think you could be right that there is a little bit more interest in this one, because this is kind of a like sort of their first crossover event, right? So you had your 2 Godzilla movies, and Kong Skull Island was very well received. So this is like, you kind of get that same kind of buzz that you get with, say, like a Marvel movie, where you get, oh, I saw Thor in, Thor and Iron Man, and now they're in a movie together. There's something that's kind of exciting about that, and I think they're kind of banking on that a little bit. But again, not to be dour, I mean, I really want this movie to do well. I want the Monsterverse to continue. But the circumstances of releasing any movie nowadays is very tough. So it's very difficult to see how it's going to make money, or a lot of money. I mean, I could be totally proven wrong on this, but making movies or making money off of streaming services for a big budget movie like this just seems very, very difficult. And people are still not going to go to the theaters, at least right now. That might change. Maybe they'll do like a thing where they re-release it in theaters down the line, like when theaters are more normal. I'm not quite sure what they're going to do. My hope is that regardless of how it does, I mean, I hope that Legendary understands that there isn't really any good way to release a movie right now in theaters or really in any circumstance and make good money. So even if it doesn't do well, I hope they don't take the wrong message from that, I guess. But I think you might be right. I do know that there's a lot of people who are very excited about it, and I really do hope it does well.
And that is going to be so interesting because we have California, we have New York, and we have other theaters that had been closed for a while open. Yes, they're running on reduced capacity, but I've seen a trend on social media of people saying, look, if we're at reduced capacity, I can put my mask on, I can space out from people for a couple of hours, I can watch the movie, I'm okay with this. I'd much rather see it on a big screen than stream it. And we come back to Warner Brothers again. It's interesting because they were the ones to essentially test the market by putting Tenet out, which turned out to be way too soon, and it didn't get the response that they were hoping. And so this in many ways led them to the approach that they're taking now of saying, well, we're going to do theatrical and HBO Max the same day, which is extremely controversial and definitely a much longer topic. But it seems like this is them again loading up saying, okay, let's see how this does. And then that sets the stage for Mortal Kombat down the line. And, it's ironic because just last week, Disney essentially said, hey, we're going to wait until literally the last minute on Black Widow to decide whether or not we delay it, whether we put it theatrically, whether we do theatrical in a paywall like we did with Raya and the Last Dragon. And so, again, this is the big test case. It's going to be all eyes are going to be watching this to see what kind of audience reaction it gets in terms of who is going to the theaters, how often they're going. And, I think it'll definitely be a test case because if it does badly, I think you're going to see a lot of these planned releases for down the line pushback. And by badly, I mean no significant increase in HBO Max subscriptions. I know that you have that. They'll have to watch out for people signing up and then dropping it right after they watch the movie. But that's neither here nor there. I think the fact is it does give very good anticipation, vibes, and something for fans who've been starved for quality theatrical escapism to look forward to. Moving on, we are going to now have a look at the next installment in the new Doom series, and this is The Ancient Gods Part 2 for Doom Eternal, which just dropped the other day, and Justin has powered through it. So, Justin, give us your thoughts on this and where you think they might do next with the franchise, please.
Yeah, so I did complete the game just last night.
Can I ask real quick how long it took you, play-wise, to go through this one?
Not that long. It was probably like maybe 3 or 4 hours.
And how long did Part 1 take you?
Probably about the same. I mean, they're both 3 levels each. So
so same difficulty and so on and so forth.
No, so actually, I was going to mention that I think that
just go ahead.
The final DLC was significantly easier than the first one, and I was slightly disappointed by that. I was hoping that they would kind of continue the pressure. I don't think there was a way to make it more difficult than the first DLC because I would argue the first DLC was as difficult. The entire DLC was as difficult as the optional gore nests, the ones that were, pretty much hyper challenges. I would say that like the Ancient God Part 1 kept the pressure up the entire time and was as difficult as those optional gore nests. The Ancient God Parts 2 is difficult. It's probably, I would say it is more challenging than the base game. But I didn't have to. There was one part in the Ancient Gods Part 1 where I didn't turn the difficulty down, but I did accept the super hyper armor or whatever at a part, just because I was dying so quickly that I didn't, with my skill level, it just was not possible, without a little bit of help. I didn't have to do that with the Ancient Gods Part 2. It was challenging, but it was a little bit more balanced, which I think for a lot of people, that's kind of what they were looking for and asking for. But it was good. I mean, when we were talking about this last time, I was saying I was, hoping that they would kind of conclude the story, and I think that's exactly what they did. They pretty much definitively, there's really nothing else they could really do with kind of what they've set up with this particular iteration of the Doom story. And I don't want to go into any spoilers, but there's no real way to escalate what they've done. I mean, in Doom, when you boil down to it, is really just you killing demons, and they've done that really well. But there isn't really a lot of places they can take this iteration of the franchise. I think they would be best served by kind of putting it on ice for a little while, and not not doing too much with it and not stretching the franchise too thin, because I think they could definitely risk doing that if they continue to do it. I mean, I think one idea I had for what they could do next is, with the modern graphics, the modern textures and everything, remake Doom 1 and 2 levels. I mean, all the assets are there. I mean, all the enemies are there and the gameplay is there. And I think a lot of people would pick up DLCs that are based on that. But barring that, I mean, the thing that I got major Quake 4 vibes towards the end of the DLC. Quake 4 was a id Tech 4 game that I liked a lot. I thought Quake 4 was excellent. So honestly, what I think I would really like id to do next is kind of do something in the Quake franchise. I know that there was talk a long time ago of them doing some type of remake of Quake 1, which I think would be very interesting, because I think Quake 1 had a lot of potential as a setting, but it was never really fully realized. The problem there is that Quake 1 relies a lot on Gothic settings, which a lot of that is covered by Doom Eternal. There's a lot of Gothic type stuff in Doom Eternal, so I think that would be a little bit difficult to do, because it would feel a little bit too samey. But I like the kind of Cthulhian, like Lovecraftian vibe that Quake 1 had. But I think the more likely one, and probably the one that I would lean a little heavier towards wanting to see, is a continuation of kind of the Strahd conflict from Quake 2/4. I was a big fan of Quake 4, and I kind of want to see them kind of continue that. And again, Doom Eternal, the end of it, I kind of got really heavy Quake 4 vibes of this very large battle kind of going on around you as you kind of continue through the level. And I think they could really do well with that franchise again, and I would really like to see them their kind of new take on the Strahd.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a very, very interesting take, because they are at the position right now where it appears they're going to put the Doom franchise on hold. So your choices for id are: do you start a new franchise? Do you do Quake? Do you have a look at Rage 3, perhaps? And that's kind of where we're at. I can't think of anything else. I don't think they're going to go dusting off Wolfenstein, although you never know. That is always a possibility as well. But I think they've been pretty heavy on that in recent years. So where do they go next? That is always the great speculation. There are some rumors going around that they may indeed take part in the E3 Online that's going to be taking place in June. There have been some rumors, unconfirmed, that have been kicking around that they will announce Starfield and do a full reveal, and then announce that it's due out at the later part of this year, barring any delays from COVID, that sort of thing. But again, all unconfirmed. One thing we got to look at the other day, and we're going to close the show on this, is PlayStation, Sony, gave a look for the new PlayStation VR controls. They announced that a new PlayStation VR to take advantage of the PlayStation 5's powers and abilities is coming, obviously not this year, likely fall of next year. But we did get a look at the new controllers. So, Justin, why don't you tell us about these?
So they look interesting. I don't really know what to make of it. VR is one of those things I've really wanted to get into it, and but I have not yet. So I don't have a lot of experience either with the Move controllers or really any of the other VR controllers. So it's hard for me to compare this against, what's currently there. But I have heard some difficult things about using the Move controllers and some criticisms of that. So hopefully this is an improvement. They look strange, but again, this is probably one of those things that probably have to kind of get your hands on it to kind of see, how they feel. I think that's ultimately the most important aspect.
The trick about it is that for those of you who haven't seen it, currently if you use the PlayStation VR, you have to use the wand controllers, and they're essentially two straight controllers that do have various buttons. They have triggers on them. They have the smaller X and O, triangle and such. And they have rubber, well, for lack of a better word, they are rubber spheres on the top, and those light up with various colors and that sort of thing. And you slip the strap over your hand, think similar to the original Wii, and that they do have a, they link up with the camera controller and the headset, and they allow you to do the hands and the manipulations and the firing and that sort of thing. The biggest issue with them is that movement is very difficult, because you either have to do things like point a wand in a direction and a little arrow comes out and you squeeze the trigger to teleport to it, or for certain shooters you had there was a trigger device that you use for certain games that you could use that to move around and stuff. You see that with various shooters and stuff, but it could be kind of a cumbersome process. And what they've done now is they simplified it. And these are semi-spherical devices that you stick over your hand. And I guess for many ways, I'm thinking like the hilt of a cutlass sword, in that it's open-ended, not closed, but it's something you stick your hand into. There's lots of room around the thumb. There's lots of room around the finger. You put your forefinger around the trigger, but you can use your thumb as a controller for the directional. Now, of course, it's going to have haptic feedback and other features. And what I looked at with this is, okay, this could work really well in that if I want to move my hands, I can move my hands, I can move them around. But if I want to do a shooter, in theory, I could use my left hand, my left thumb, to move the character around, and use the right hand to fire, or, obviously there's triggers on both. It does seem like it has some more options, and of course there are other buttons on there to work the menus and that sort of thing. They look very comfortable. They look like they'll be very useful. It talks about how there's adaptive triggers on both. There's the haptic feedback, so that's where the tension level can change. It has finger touch detection, so it can detect your fingers without pressing in the area where you play. It has tracking, so it is tracked with the new VR headset through a ring across the bottom of the controller. And of course, there's action buttons and analog sticks. So obviously, this looks to be an enhancement over where they are currently. There's a lot of talk and hope, myself included, that the recently awarded at South by Southwest for Best VR Game Half-Life Alyx might make its move over to the PlayStation 5 when the new headset hardware arrives, because these controllers seem much better suited for action-oriented shooters than the current setup does. So we shall see. Anyway, anything else you wanted to add in today, Justin?
Nope, that should just about cover it.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week. And folks, I did want to mention we'll probably be a bit later next week because we're going to record either Sunday evening or Monday evening, because I will be out of the house, just some various things and that sort of thing on Sunday, and just wanted to make sure that we let you know so people are not wondering where everyone is Sunday night if we don't have the new episode up at that time. Until next week, take care, stay safe, and have a fantastic one. We'll talk to you soon.